2 National Guardsmen are in critical condition a day after being shot just blocks away from the White House. President Trump calling the shooting an act of terror and deploying 500 more National Guard troops in the nation's capital. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mario Tu, who was on the scene when the shooting happened yesterday and has been closely following the story. Mari, good evening.
I was about 2 blocks from this. Tiff, good evening. Yes, we're here at the scene of the shooting, which happened just a little before 2:15 p.m. yesterday at Farragut West Station behind me, which is just a couple of blocks up from the White House. I was in an Uber on my way to report at the White House, turning from I onto 17th there behind me when I heard multiple shots ring out. I saw a National Guardsman fall to the ground, and then there was a lockdown immediately put in place as MPD and Secret Service and firemen were all deployed to the location of the shooting. The FBI has spent this Thanksgiving investigating the shooting as a possible act of terrorism. The Department of Homeland Security has identified the suspect as a 29-year-old Afghan national who drove cross-country to commit what D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is calling a targeted attack. He's currently being charged with 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and possession of a firearm during a violent crime. U.S. Attorney for D.C. Janine Pirro and FBI Director Kash Patel are saying this about the suspect's background today. Watch.
The suspect, he has been identified as Rahmanullah Lakanwal, a 29-year-old Afghan who entered the United States under Biden's Operation Allies Welcome, a program following the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. What we know about him is that he drove his vehicle across country from the state of Washington with the intended target of coming to our nation's capital.
I also spoke to Director of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, last night, and Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. There is confirmation now that the subject had a relationship in Afghanistan with partner forces. We are fully investigating that aspect of his background as well, to include any known associates that are either overseas or here in the United States of America. That is what a broad-based international terrorism investigation looks like.
The U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced late Wednesday night after the shooting that they are stopping processing immigration applications from Afghanistan in the wake of the shooting. And President Trump last night addressed the nation from Mar-a-Lago, Florida, where he's spending his Thanksgiving, saying that Lakanwal was, quote, flown in by the Biden administration in September 2021 on one of those infamous flights that everybody was talking about. The president there is referring to a Biden-era program called Operation Allies Welcome, which provided entry to Afghan nationals after U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021. Take a look.
This heinous assault was an act of evil, an act of hatred, and an act of terror. It was a crime against our entire nation. It was a crime against humanity. The hearts of all Americans tonight are with those 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard and their families. The love of our entire country is pouring out for them. We must now re-examine every single alien who has entered our country from Afghanistan under Biden, and we must take all necessary measures to ensure the removal of any alien from any country who does not belong here or add benefit to our country. If they can't love our country, we don't want them. America will never bend and never yield in the face of terror.
The Biden administration says that Operation Allies Welcome was intended to support what it calls vulnerable Afghans, including those who worked alongside the U.S. in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem criticizes the program as having allowed in what she calls thousands of unvetted Afghan nationals, including terrorists. And White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller says this about President Trump's remarks. Watch.
The President's remarks, I think, were among the most moving that I've ever heard. It was perfect for this incredibly tragic occasion, this heartbreaking, anguishing tragedy right before Thanksgiving. We've never faced a threat like this. 20 million people brought into our country from the most failed societies on earth. Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, Iraq. brought here, no vetting, no conditions, no rules, brought here on visas, brought here as refugees, brought here as asylees, brought here as illegals, brought here in every way imaginable, by plane, train, bus, automobile, by land, by sea. For 4 straight years, they deluged this country. And now more blood is being spilled as a result.
And Joseph Edlow, the head of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, is announcing today that his agency is launching a reexamination of green card holders from what the administration calls 19 countries of concern. Tiff.
And we remember that the president back in June issued a proclamation listing 19 countries he considered, quote, deficient with regards to screening and vetting. Afghanistan is among them, as are Haiti, Iran, and Venezuela. Mari, meanwhile, though, what do we know about the 2 guardsmen who were shot yesterday?
Sure, Tiff. So both of those guardsmen have been identified, and both are in critical condition after having undergone surgery. One of them is Sarah Beckstrom, a 20-year-old, and a 24-year-old Andrew Wolf. Beckstrom's father tells the New York Times that his daughter suffered a mortal wound and is unlikely to recover. Both are members of the West Virginia National Guard, and according to Judge Pirro, both Andrew and Sarah were sworn in less than 24 hours before they were shot yesterday. And a few months ago, when President Trump mobilized the D.C. National Guard back on August 11th, 300 Guard from West Virginia were deployed to Washington, D.C., and 160 volunteered to extend their deployment until the end of the year, including these 2 guardsmen. Attorney General Pam Bondi says this about the Guardsmen Watch.
I'd like to add something about the young woman. She volunteered to be there on Thanksgiving, working today. She volunteered, as did many of those guardsmen and women, so other people could be home with their families. Yet now their families are in hospital rooms with them while they are fighting for their lives. So, just pray, everyone pray today for these 2 soldiers, these 2 guardsmen, the man and woman. They are heroes. They are the best of the best. They are working so we can all go to church, so our kids can go to school, so we can celebrate Thanksgiving with our families. Yet this horrific tragedy happened right now, and these families are having Thanksgiving at the bedside of their children and their family members.
Attorney General Pam Bondi adds that Lakanwal's charges are dependent on the prognosis of the 2 guardsmen, but that the worst-case scenario will be minimum life in prison with terrorism charges. This is coming as President Trump deploys 500 additional National Guardsmen to D.C. In the wake of the shooting. Tiff.
Moving remarks from the Attorney General there, and certainly a tragic Thanksgiving for the families of those guardsmen and the nation. Pivoting slightly, though, Mari, how is President Trump spending his Thanksgiving?
Sure, Tiff. So as per Trump family tradition, President Trump is spending his Thanksgiving in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. The only event on his schedule today is an evening call with service members. And meanwhile, Secretary Kennedy is posting an AI-edited photo to X that's generated a lot of attention today, the original of which was from November of last year. The 2024 original pictured HHS Secretary Kennedy with Elon Musk and the president sharing a McDonald's meal with Donald Trump Jr. joking that the Make America Healthy Again agenda starts tomorrow. The edited version has swapped out the McDonald's for a Thanksgiving meal aboard the president's private plane. And amid this playful twist from the secretary, though, President Trump, his message this Thanksgiving is one of renewing faith, which he articulated during the turkey pardon on Tuesday. Watch.
I hope all Americans will have the chance to enjoy the fellowship of family and friends and renew our faith in God's providence. We have more people praying. The churches are coming back, but religion is coming back to America.
And as President Trump officially proclaims today as National Thanksgiving Day, he does so in the spirit of George Washington. His presidential proclamation reads that in 1789, just after America's triumph over tyranny in the Revolutionary War, President George Washington established the first National Day of Thanksgiving, declaring the duty of all nations to acknowledge the providence of Almighty God, to obey his will, to be grateful for his benefits, and humbly to implore his protection and favor. The president then turns to the present, touting a strong economy, global peace, and a renewed American spirit, before ultimately turning to the future, saying that as we prepare to celebrate 250 years of American independence, this Thanksgiving, we vow to build a future that echoes their sacrifice. Above all, the president says, we offer our endless gratitude to Almighty God for his love, grace, and infinite blessings. Tiff, back to you.
All right, Mari, thanks for those updates and happy Thanksgiving.